yeah, I did change, and I'm really glad I changed.
This one's wife. No, you can't keep them. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Marie Claire, an article by Rachel Birchfield, tells us Prince Harry and this one's wife had to return £7 million in wedding gifts from fans because of little-known royal protocol. Fans flocked to Windsor for Prince Harry and this one's wife's wedding on May the 19th, 2018, nearly 6 years ago, and still bringing up the past. Many of them bearing gifts. But the Mirror reports royal protocol and a little-known rule dictated that many of the gifts had to be returned. For perhaps understandable reasons, safety being chief among them, members of the royal family are unable to accept any gifts that members of the public bring along with them to meet the royal family in person, be it at a royal wedding, a royal tour, or a royal engagement. Those that brought gifts on site at Windsor had their gifts returned to them. Instead, per an official statement sent out prior to the wedding, well-wishers who wanted to send a gift were to do so by sending it to Kensington Palace, where Harry and this one's wife's offices were at the time. The reason for this was because palace aides wanted to prevent people and companies from using the newlywed Duke and Duchess of Sussex for publicity. It was previously reported that Harry and this one's wife had to return £7 million in wedding gifts for that very reason. This isn't just a Harry and this one's wife rule. Oh, what a surprise. Thought, of course, everything has to be about them and therefore it would just be about them. But apparently it's a rule for the entire royal family. Well, naturally. No family member is allowed to accept gifts that could be seen as advertising. After all, as we well know, the royals, particularly Kate and this one's wife, are huge influencers on what to buy, and anything they wear sells out nearly immediately. Which I always find rather entertaining, because you can understand why the things that the Princess of Wales wears will sell out, because she invariably looks elegant and stylish. But with regard to this one's wife, is it really the case that there are legions of people out there who decide, I want to look like Kermit going to church, or one of our Jowers is missing, that I want to look like Zebra Crossing by Grift, or Tent by Army Surplus, that I want to look like Chairman Mao visits New York, or the Bouncing Berry of Harlem, that I think that it would be a really good look for me to have the pit stains of doom or a poo emoji hat, and after all, having Hyacinth Bouquet's settee cover would be really decent, or perhaps dressing like a teacup by Royal Doulton, or ultimately being overripe burst tomato lady. Are there really people out there that think to themselves, that's how I want to look? I suspect not, and I think much of what's written about certain items selling out is as a consequence of either this one's wife buying them herself, or it's just PR pap that's been pumped out there to make her seem more popular than she actually is. The article tells us the fundamental principle governing the acceptance of gifts by members of the royal family is that no gifts, including hospitality or services, should be accepted which would or might appear to place the member of the royal family under any obligation to the donor, official guidelines read. In fact, Harry and this one's wife did request one wedding gift in particular ahead of their big day, a donation to one of 7 charities of their choice, including Chiva, Crisis, Minor Mahalia Foundation, Scottish Little Soldiers, Street Games, Surfers Against Sewage, it's an interesting one, and the Wilderness Foundation, UK. Thus, an article which is about this one's wife, even though, of course, it applies to all members of the royal family, bringing up the past from nearly 5 years ago in order to control the now. But how might this one's wife have reacted to the fact that she wasn't allowed to keep all of those gifts? Badly would be the short answer. Driven by her sense of entitlement, much in the same way that she sought freebies from fashion houses, the gifts that were provided by people she would have wanted to keep. Some of it would have been tat, things that have been perhaps made at home that she wouldn't really have any interest in, and she'd have no difficulty with those being sent back. But more stylish, more expensive items that might have been provided to her from certain quarters, she would have wanted to keep. And much in the same way as when she was in Australia, she said, "I can't believe that I'm not being paid for this," when she was doing a sort of meet and greet. She would also think that it was entirely acceptable for her to accept the gifts. After all, they are for her. Who is to say that she shouldn't receive them? Even though there is a most legitimate explanation as to why it shouldn't be accepted, because of the consequences of being seen to advertise certain things, it's better to impose that blanket rule. The fact remains that this one's wife, like many narcissists, would see that the rules don't apply to her, that she should be allowed to accept them, that it's unfair that she's not allowed to. Driven by her sense of entitlement, her lack of accountability, her inability to follow rules, procedures and conventions and protocols, she would have expected to have kept them and would not have liked to have been told that, actually, no, you can't. Whichever individual was tasked with explaining to her that she couldn't keep them would have provided her with challenge fuel, and therefore would likely have received a somewhat withering response from her, protesting the ridiculousness. "It's not as if I'm going to go flaunting that these people have bought me these things," she would have said. "It's not like I'm going to go around showing them off." But nevertheless, the royal protocol dictates that she couldn't receive them. But it is interesting that this is a matter, of course, that took place years ago and is consigned to history. Yet, once again, the necessity of remaining relevant, of ensuring that the now is controlled either by the future or by the past, this one's wife has had to ensure that Marie Claire, which is one of the supine publications, that has to ensure that this is brought to the forefront once again. It's not getting past the commenters, though. Carrie, below the line, states, "I like how the headline draws the attention right to Mr. and Mrs. Markle, but it's a rule that all members of the royal family must adhere to." They made their own rules and now find themselves on the outside looking in, just like everyone else. This is what they wanted. Linda, this isn't new, nor is it news. It's been protocol and rule for all of the royal family, not just the Markles. Even the royal children can only accept small gifts like teddy bears or small toys, which are usually then donated. It's a rule that's in place for the US President and First Lady as well. Any gift over a certain amount is considered to be property of the United States, or cannot be accepted because it would appear to be given in exchange for favours or promotions. Of course, I'm sure Walmart Wallace was screaming racism, crying about how she can't keep all the things for herself, likely had tears running out of her left eye as she collapsed to the floor upon hearing the news. Kelsme, it's a well-known rule, but I bet Megalodon was chewing nails over the loss of the freebies. Ira, I know, I was upset when they returned my gift of one-way tickets to Mongolia. Julie, they got married in 2018. How is this news in 2024? MD11 must be a slow news day to bring up news several years old. And of course, people can see quite readily that it's just another PR exercise of mentioning this one's wife, but also you'll see the way that those commenting recognise the way that this one's wife would respond to being told that she could not keep the gifts. What I've noticed is invariably I always have a look at below the line when I'm commenting upon various articles for the purpose of educating you about narcissism, is that there is a clear and increased awareness of what she's about and the condemnation that comes with it. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.